Hello and welcome to Speaking Spirit, where we talk about all things spiritual. Your host, John Moore, is a shamanic practitioner and spiritual teacher. And now, here's John.
Hey everybody. I have a very special episode of this podcast today. I'm very excited. I don't have a lot of guests on this show. I guess because I like hearing myself talk. I don't know. But I'm very pleased to have a guest today, and I don't want to delay at all. So I'm gonna introduce her, and you'll pardon me if I'm reading a little bit her bio because she's got a lot going on, and I'm gonna try not to get anything wrong. My guest today is Susie Beiler, and she is a certified holistic health practitioner and a foundation of the Creation Temple, and I love that name, an online library supporting light workers in their spiritual path. Susie is a living example of the balanced divine feminine masculine, also love that, working with deeply sensitive empaths to tap into their divine power, master their energy, and live their soul mission. She's a dynamic public speaker, and I can attest to that, with a commanding stage presence. She lives and leads retreats in Sedona, Arizona, one of the most beautiful places on earth, and enjoys nature, authenticity, and high vibrational food. You can find her website, and I will link to it underneath this as well, is www.susiebeiler.com, SUSIEBEILER.com, and www.creationtemple.com, and that's three W's, www.sedonarebirthingretreats.com. And we're also going to talk about something very exciting coming up. Well, if you're listening to this in the end of May or June, something very exciting that's coming up in June. But welcome, Susie. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you so much for having me, John. This is so much fun to be here.
Did I do well with your introduction? I realize I editorialized a little bit, but
You did awesome. And I'll just make one correction, but
okay.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad because most people get it wrong. It's the pronunciation of my last name, which is Beiler.
Beiler. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
terrible. That's my worst sin. But thank you for correcting me because I really, really don't like to pronounce people's name incorrectly. Like that's a super important thing to me. So thank you for that correction. I appreciate it. I would hate to think that I was repeatedly calling you the wrong thing. And
No worries. And people do it all the time. So like I said, don't feel bad about it.
It's hard. I mean, I guess I was, fortunate, unfortunate. My name is really common. I mean, my last name's like one of the 16th most common names in the U.S. or something like that. And
Really?
John, yeah, and John is super, super common. So nobody ever mispronounces my name. But that's cool. So we're going to talk about the Soul Power Summit in a little bit, and that's a project that I'm involved with. So very very excited about that. And I was just checking out the page with a list of guests. So there's or I don't know if you call them guests, but the speakers, the whole list of speakers, and there's a whole bunch of people there.
My co-collaborators.
Co-collaborators. Yeah. So lots of exciting topics, and all sort of centered around soul work. And that's what I really want to talk to you about today, because that is my, I don't know. That's my thing, I guess. I do.
That's your jam.
Yeah, that's my jam. I do. I work as a shamanic practitioner, and I do healing sessions with people, and I work with students, walking them through sometimes in the beginning through the basics of shamanism. But then I really, really like to get into the deep soul stuff, and I absolutely love that. So I'm going to put you on the spot just a hair, because
Awesome.
I'm going to ask you the same question that you asked me when we recorded the my chat for the Soul Power Summit, which is coming up soon. how do you describe soul? What's your definition of soul?
Yeah, that's a big question. So I'll do my best. From my human understanding and experience, I describe soul as that truest, most whole part of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I understand that, sometimes we do need soul healing. But the way Prime Creator, and this is the energy that I channel for those of you who don't know my work, the way Prime Creator describes soul is that there's a core that is always whole. There's a core that can't be touched. So even if we have soul wounding, it's more at the outer layers. It's not at that core. So we have this amazing resource for our human existence and our human experience. We have this amazing resource to call upon to help us make decisions, to help us get clear about things, to help us understand why we're here on this planet, our purpose, our mission. And my understanding is that the soul goes on a journey throughout its existence. So we don't always take on human incarnation. Sometimes it's animal, sometimes it's, semi-formless, semi-physical. And during all of our travels, we gather information, we gather wisdom, we go through learnings and lessons in other realms and realities, and our soul remembers all of that. Our soul hosts and holds all of that, if you will. So when we come into this human existence, we have all of that wisdom from all of those different places, dimensions, realms, and we can activate it here in our human experience. And so I think of like people who are naturally good at playing piano, or they have these skills that they seem to be born with. And it's like, well, how do they know how to do that? And my guess would be that that's part of what's in their soul.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And from one shamanic perspective, I guess, and one of my personal interests, I don't talk a whole lot about it, but one of my personal interests is looking at Norse spirituality, particularly Old Norse shamanism, which can be a little tough to unpack because most of it is written about in very metaphorical language and the things that are written down. I mean, there are people who have unbroken family traditions going back, 1,000 years or something. But there is this concept in, so the Norse, along with, in Kabbalah and in the Egyptians, and probably lots of other people, have a concept of multi-part soul, right? Where sometimes we think of the soul as this just sort of one entity, but I like to think of it almost like the body, that there are organs and parts and systems, and it can be relatively complex. And one of those parts that the Norse recognize is called the hummingya, and that is this, physically it's located towards your back, but it's almost hard to describe. It's like the concept of luck combined with all the stuff that you inherited from your ancestors. And so the idea is one form of reincarnation, when you die, you pass this on to somebody. Normally it would be somebody named after, in that tradition, normally it would be somebody like an ancestor named after you. Down the line, you're like passing on your ancestral wisdom. So that's part of it as well. But one of the things I have found that was a little challenging to get my brain around when I first studied it, when I was looking at past lives and learning like, oh wow, I can actually be my own ancestor, right? So I can have be my 20th great grandfather and have incarnated this time around in this body to work through whatever the ancestral stuff is that's coming up. I'm wondering if you ever run into any of the ancestral stuff when you're doing your work.
Not so much that I'm aware of. Mm-hmm. I can certainly grasp the idea of that as a possibility. Mm-hmm. And it is an interesting exploration, right? Because I have in my own family, I wonder sometimes about certain people in my family. Mm-hmm. And if there are connections that way, it's fascinating. And then you sort of get into deeper inquiries about, well, could part of their soul have reincarnated with this soul, or
it can be pretty mind-boggling. Yeah, for sure. And then there's I did a class once on parallel life healing, which is something that I do, but that's sort of really mind twisty, that there are other versions of ourselves running around in other split realities. Almost every time we make a decision, we're kind of splitting off the tree of causation. So there's potentially infinite versions of ourselves running around out there.
And do you think that those infinite versions all have the same soul, or they all have different souls?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know how to describe it. I think in my take from it, we, and I think I'm kind of describing the same thing that you were describing, but maybe using different language. And I find that tends to be true, that people are really kind of talking about the same stuff, but have different language to describe it.
Sure.
So we all come from source, right? Some people call that God or the universe or the creator or the grand architect, or, words are limited. Words are very limited to describe what source is. So source is this singularity that has I describe it as like, if you could think of an endless light that has no center and no circumference. It is everywhere and everything and across all universes. And so then if you to imagine this infinite bright white light that you stuck a prism in front of, that split off into all of these little beams of light, different colored beams. Those little beams are like us. We're all kind of thinking of ourselves as these individual beings, but if we trace our root back, we're all coming from the same source. If you were to remove that prism, then we would all just be source again. But and this is not possible, but if you were to shut off source, we wouldn't exist. We would all cease to exist, because we are source. We're just flavors. We're just prisms of light. And that's sort of my take on that. So part of us is I see it as everything's connected to everything. It's very difficult to sort of differentiate. Is a parallel life kind of the same? What are we sharing between parallel lives? Well, we're sharing source, at least, and there must be something we're sharing if this is a version of me on the other side. But to know what that is, when I see it in Journey, it almost looks like a person. You remember the movie The Matrix, when they had like the green characters running down the screen when people would go into the Matrix? It looks a little bit like that to me, but it's like the shape of the person, but like, colors and lights and, and then when you merge the person with this, when you do this parallel life healing, this merging, the person just gets really, really bright, gets really brighter. It would be cool, though, if I could merge with, say, the version of me that became fluent in French and then all of a sudden start speaking French. Like that I would love that.
I call that integrating our soul aspects. Mm-hmm. So we can put parallel lives, parallel universes into that understanding where one soul, we're multidimensional, we interface with many realms and realities, we're multifaceted as a soul. And so those multifaceted, those facets could be parallel lives or parallel universes, right? So when we integrate our soul aspects, that means that we're taking all those different facets of our soul, whether shadow or light, and we're integrating them to heal, to expand, to evolve.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned shadow, and because shadow work is a really important part of what I do as well. And so, one of the, I guess, synonyms for the shadow is the exile, right? It's the part of ourselves we kick out. We're like, I don't want to look at you because my parents told me that's not okay, or I somehow from society told me that part is undesirable, or, I feel like I'm spiritually evolved and shouldn't feel anger anymore, or, whatever it is, I've decided I'm going to shoot this part away from me.
Yeah. But
that's not any less a part of you than the stuff we try to turn towards, the stuff we try to embrace. And I think when I do shadow work with people, it's amazing how much power gets released within people because they've been, first of all, spending a lot of effort to push this part of themselves down. But also now they're integrating a part of themselves. They're pulling something in, and it was something they didn't want to look at before. But even
and that's more power when it's integrated.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think, so I had this fear. This was my fear when I first started doing shadow work for myself with my teachers, and was that, okay, let's say there's this part of me that, I don't know. I mean, there isn't, but let's say there's this part of me that wants to be a serial killer. If I integrate, like that would be in the shadow. If I integrate that, and that's, I think that's a fear that a lot of people have. Like all of a sudden I'm going to pull in these parts of myself that I've locked away for a reason, and it's going to change, and I'm all of a sudden going to become antisocial or something like that. And that's not it at all. That's not what happens.
No, that's not what happens at all.
Right. It's the holding that stuff down that's the unhealthy part.
Exactly. Yeah. When you integrate a part of yourself, whether it's shadow or light, there is more power. There is, it goes back to that core. There's a core of our being, and a shadow is just a little piece of who we are or who we were. And so when you integrate that, you're just becoming more whole. That's all that's happening. You're not going to turn into that which you fear. And I also see with the light, with people, we also suppress the light. So as much as we suppress the shadow, sometimes we suppress the light. We have just as great a fear of the light sometimes because of how powerful it is, or because of how illuminating it is. If you integrate an aspect of your light, suddenly you're more illuminated and it shines light on your shadow. So it's this interesting polarity dance that we do.
It is. And you're absolutely right. Like some people, it's like the fear of success that some people have. There's also this fear of, and it sounds almost counterintuitive. Why would I be afraid of being successful? Or why would I be afraid of being of approaching my light or really embodying that? And, there's lots of reasons for that. One is that as human beings, we're very homeostatic. We try to stay, even our bodies try to stay in the same place all the time. Like we only operate within a very limited temperature range. We only operate within a very limited pH range in our bloodstream. And anything outside of that, we get sick or worse. And so sometimes change is scary. But I promise you, if you do shadow or light work, you won't get sick or die. That's not, we're all going to die someday, but that's not what's going to happen.
Be from doing shadow work.
No, it will not. If it was, I would be dead by now. Trust me. I've been doing lots and lots of that stuff for years. I also want to touch, because you mentioned your bio. Well, you mentioned a lot of things that I'm extremely interested in, and stuff that I've talked about quite a lot as well. And you talk about being a living example of embodying the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And this is a really, really important topic to me for a lot of reasons. One, because we've been living in a patriarchy for, several thousand years, and that hasn't served anybody extremely well. But I also think people have kind of a twisted idea of masculinity and femininity that has nothing to do with the divine masculine and feminine, and that causes a lot of problems in our world. So I would love to hear, in your words, how you would describe the divine masculine and the divine feminine, what balancing those kind of looks like.
For me, the divine masculine is focused, driven, motivated, grounded. For me, the divine feminine is very receptive, warm, soft, receiving. I said that already. Mm-hmm. That's because that's what she is. And there's a very, this is more divine mother, but there's a very like unconditional love that comes from the divine feminine as well. And not that the divine masculine can't be that, but, and not that any of these are exclusive to either one.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's just that there tends to be more of that nature. So as I've been developing the Soul Power Symposium, I've been using my divine masculine to get stuff done. You know, there are a lot of action items on my list that need to happen and get done. And then I've been using my divine feminine to receive the right speakers and collaborators, to receive the participants that are going to be consuming the content. And so there's this dance of, you know, making it happen, getting it done, and allowing it to happen, and allowing it to be what it's meant to be, allowing it to be its own creation.
Yeah.
Just the feminine, the allowing.
Yeah, I was going to say that is a very feminine concept to me. And when I started out in my practice, I think I came from a very, obviously I'm male, I identify as male, and I thought I always had to be doing something, right? I always had to be like, when I'm working with a client, I've got to be in there. And one of the things I found is just sitting back and holding space for people, holding non-judgmental space, which is very divine feminine. Like that is so
more
healing. That is so unbelievably healing. And it seems like, well, you're not doing anything. You know, kind of, but it's a not doing in a very special way, in a very soul empowering way. And it's not, the masculine wants to rescue, right? And if I rescue somebody, I'm sort of disempowering them. I'm saying like, you need to be rescued. But I can step back and you know, offer help and offer support without rescuing. But really, if I can hold space, if I can embrace the feminine aspect, then people will self-empower, they'll heal, and just being witnessed is incredibly, incredibly powerful. I was shocked to discover that myself. But it really, really is. It really is a beautiful thing, and to hold that in. And I love the way that you describe that as being a dance, right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't know that I've described it that way before, but that makes complete sense to me. That even in my work, even if it's one-on-one working with a client, or if I'm teaching a class, there is this real balance in, okay, now is the time for me to be active and do something. And now is the time for me to sit back and create a nurturing environment for this person to be able to grow in. And since I've been really consciously doing that, it's been quite eye-opening. So, yeah.
I love this whole dance, this whole idea of how they can work together. You know, there's a time for everything. There's a time to move forward. There's a time to pull back. There's a time to make things happen. There's a time to allow things to happen. And I've really gotten deeply in tune with those polarities. When is it? I don't always get it right, but you know, when do I pull back and allow? When do I step forward and take an action?
Right.
I grew up very much in my masculine energy, so I'm very familiar with my masculine and how he operates. I'm not sure how to say that. I'm very familiar with what that looks like, and for me, misusing that has led to burnout, adrenal fatigue. You had chronic fatigue syndrome. It has led to taking too much action and spinning my wheels and burning the candle at both ends. And it's like, well, when does the universe get a chance to step in and deliver if I'm always spinning?
Right.
So I had to learn what and who my feminine is and how to relax into her and how to allow her to take charge, which she doesn't take charge, she allows.
I want to touch a little bit because you mentioned adrenal fatigue, which is something I went through as well, and you mentioned chronic fatigue, and I know that's part of your story and how you came into doing what you do. And I mean, if you don't mind talking about that a little bit, and how you came into doing this very high level soul. I hate to use the word levels, like there's this, but it's very
limitations
powerful.
Of human language.
Yeah. I always language trips me up all the time. This very empowering soul work that you do, like you have, as we all do, we all have a story about how we got attracted into this. But I think it's important for people who may be listening to see, and I will frequently talk about my story, not that I'm trying to say, hey, look how awesome I am, but I'm just some dumb guy in Maine, and if I can heal from all of this stuff, so can you. Like, I'm not special. I'm no better than anybody else. That's not the message. So the message I like to spread is a message of hope. I was in a really bad place, and so I don't know if you feel okay with it, I would love to hear a little bit of your story and how you came into this, because I do think that is an amazing thing for people to hear about.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of levels and layers to this. So I grew up Mennonite, which is a part of the Christian religion, and it's a very set way of being and rules you have to follow. And so there was a certain level of spiritual suppression going on with that. And then I also, like I was saying, I grew up in my masculine energy a lot. And so I was misusing my energy and my power in certain ways, making things happen. And then it was also just, I came here for a reason, and I wasn't living my mission. And what I did, I was a pediatric occupational therapy, and there was a reason I went through that training. There was a reason I had that career. That was great. That was part of my journey, but that ultimately wasn't what I was meant to spend my time doing. And so my body had to kind of shut down and break down to free me from all the things that I was, in bondage over. So I had a pretty miraculous experience, literally a light bulb moment on the acupuncture table, where all of a sudden I just had this full knowing on every layer, level, and part of my being that I was healed, and I didn't have the chronic fatigue anymore. And then what happened after that was a very dedicated journey to be on my spiritual path, to live my soul mission, to rewire my DNA, to rewire my nervous system, to reconfigure everything that didn't work and didn't serve my soul mission. And that has become my sole focus in life. That is who I am. That is what I do. That is my business. That is my play. That is like everything is my soul mission. And I just want to say that path isn't for everyone. So please don't compare yourself to me. Like John was saying, I'm just this guy from Maine. I'm just this gal from Pennsylvania. I'm not special. But I am special in the sense that I have chosen to focus on this and make this my life's work and make this the expression of my mission. So anyone can be special in that way if they choose it.
Absolutely. And I like that you said that. I always tell people, I'm going to talk about shamanism a whole lot because that's my path, but I don't recommend shamanism as a path for everybody. It's not. It's not. Yeah. And just like you have found your path. You've found the thing, and like I can feel when you're talking about it some real similarities to what happened with me, where I'm like, I'm going to go heal myself, and then I found out, wow, this is my home. This is where I belong. This is what I belong doing. Yeah. And when you hit that path, like There's just that knowing that you're describing, that knowing on all levels. This is where I meant to be. This is what I meant to do. And I don't know if you found the same thing, but for me, when I found my path, like obstacles would just get pushed out of my way. Like I decided I was going to study shamanism, and I found a teacher who was offering an apprenticeship, and I contacted her, and she goes, "You've missed the introductory work. You've missed my last introductory class. I don't know, all this." I was like, "Oh gosh, I don't know." She says, "Well, I suppose if you meet with me, we'll talk about it. We'll figure it out." And I don't know why, but she accepted me, and I spent 6 years in study with her, and she's retired from teaching, but she still is my teacher, and just lots and lots of things got moved, lots of obstacles got moved out of my path, and I think that just happens when you're in the right space, when you're doing what you're meant to be doing. And I think, in Sanskrit, they might call it your dharma, right? Your path. This is your path. And that's really individual for everybody. It could be who knows what.
I would say yes and no. I've had those experiences.
Yeah.
Where it feels miraculous, like something just opens up. And I've also had those experiences where I have had to work incredibly hard for who I am, for what I have in this life, to heal. And this is where I do feel it's different for everyone. And this is part of my understanding of the soul journey. Whatever it is that I'm meant to achieve, accomplish, heal, whatever in this lifetime, according to my soul, that's what I'm going to come in contact with. And I'm very much of the understanding and the decision that I am getting it done this lifetime. So I don't know if that means I have more to overcome or more to heal, or, that I have stuff built up from other realms, realities, lifetimes, however you want to understand it, that I need to take care of in this lifetime. I don't know if that just means that I'm in my own way and in my mind sometimes. I don't know what it all means. I just know that my path has looked a certain way. I'm open to it being different. But I have had to overcome a lot.
Sure.
And sometimes, that has opened up when I have those breakthroughs. It opens up the pathways. And sometimes the pathways just open and it seems like I didn't have to do anything. So I feel like some of that is all kind of orchestrated at the soul level, and it's not my business almost.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And in shamanism, we talk about initiation a lot. And initiation, you might go through a ceremony, and I went through a 2-year process of doing ceremony after ceremony, initiation ceremonies. Those are ceremonies. That's not what initiation is, though. When you go through a ceremony that a teacher or a shaman's putting you through, that's a ceremony. But spirit initiates you. And initiation on a shamanic level, which is, I think anybody goes through this, and you talk about things coming up and obstacles you have to overcome. I describe it as like putting your life in one of those snow globes and sticking it in a paint shaker and just shaking the heck out of it in those industrial paint mixers. Because that definitely, that definitely has happened to me. I've gone through, relationships. I got divorced in the middle of my training. I, wound up in a relationship with, somebody that ended in a really not so great way. And I've been through huge transitions. And you can't really, you're right, you can't really steer that so much. But I think there is absolutely a purpose to that, to those initiations happening. Like it's almost like it's taking you apart so you can put yourself back together.
Yep. I know that all my deaths and rebirths have been part of the teaching and the guidance that I offer others. There is so much depth in what I've gone through that when a client comes to me, there are very few people I can't help at this point because of what I've gone through.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and when you become aware, how am I going to put this? When you become aware of your past and your parallel lives and all of this stuff coming in, nothing surprises or shocks you so much anymore.
Right.
I talk to people all the time. They go, "This is going to sound weird," and I'm like, "Trust me, nothing is going to sound weird to me. It may be something I've never encountered before. That's unlikely, but nothing you tell me, I'm going to go, wow, that is so out there. I can't even conceive of that. Nothing's going to shock me at that level at this point."
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's funny not funny, but clients will come and they'll be scared to share something, and I'm like, listen, this is a safe space.
Yeah,
kind of seen it all. Like, you're addicted to porn, okay, no big deal.
Right.
Just all these things that people are so embarrassed or ashamed of, and it's like, let's just put it into the light. We'll take care of it. It's no big deal.
Right. Yeah. But it's challenging because people are used to modalities where they are judged for what they do. Like, the medical model can be, and there are lots of great physicians out there. And I've had, in my shamanic training, I've had doctors and dentists and therapists and psychologists. I've had people, and I love that. I love to see that. I love to see people doing integrative things. I like to point this out. A giant hawk just flew through the back of my yard. So while we're chatting here, always a really good sign. But I have people come to me with all kinds of stuff, and I'm like, I'm never going to judge you. And, and if during the session something comes up, like you want to cry, you want to scream, you want to call me names, do it. Whatever, pull it up. It wants to come out. Once it comes out, you're going to feel better. It's the holding that stuff down. Again, it's that pushing that stuff into the shadow, because it's not okay for me to feel angry, or it's not okay for me to feel sad, or it's not okay for me to admit to somebody that I take recreational drugs or am addicted to porn or whatever it is that people are doing. First of all, you're not alone. There are, millions of other people out there with the same things going on for them. And second of all, who am I to judge anybody? I'm not. Like, I'm here to show up as I'm sure you are. I'm here to show up in love, and love is non-judgmental. It's it just is. It just holds you. It is complete and acceptance, and that is healing for so many people. That in itself, even if I did nothing else but just let people talk to me in a non-judgmental way, it's like talk therapy. The research shows that something like 85 to 90% of the benefit of talk therapy is just the relationship with the therapist. Like, the technique doesn't matter that much in talk therapy. You could be doing anything as long as they're letting you talk and not judging you. And isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing how we're built to heal that way?
Yeah, just to hold, like you were saying earlier, to hold space for somebody. Most of us in this life don't have the experience of truly having someone hold space for us. So that in and of itself is deeply healing. It's profound. Yeah,
it really is. And I have been blessed to have many practitioners as friends who have, I get, if I feel like I need some work, I have lots of people I can go to. But I've had that experience, and it's hard to describe how beautiful it is from the other side, but it's beautiful from this side as well. Like, I feel amazing when I can do that for somebody, when I see somebody getting a benefit from that. I don't want to do anything else. Like, this is it. This is part of the reason why this is my path. It's, there is no high like that I have ever experienced. There's nothing quite like it, and it's a little bit. I'm sure you find the same way. It's hard to describe almost.
It's deeply fulfilling to be able to hold a non-judgmental space for someone. And I will say my work with channeling the prime creator energy has really boosted my ability to do that, has really taught me a lot, because when I first started bringing through the energy, I was like, wow, there's no judgment here. And I have tended in my past to be very judgmental. And so it was very interesting to feel that energy contrast with mine, because I'm a conscious channel. I'm very, aware when I'm bringing through the energy. And so I will feel my judgment, and then I'll feel prime creator energy, and there's no judgment. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I get to notice my judgments.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's, we're coming up toward, I can't believe we've been talking for this time, but we're coming up towards the end of the talk, but I want to, because I'm really interested in channeling, and I have done, I do some channeling, but not, I don't really do it with clients that much. I do it for as part of my training, part of my other work, and whatever. And I do it consciously as well. I'm aware of what's going on. And some people might not know the different types of channeling there are. There are people who are what they call like deep trance channelers, who will go into like a very deep trance and channel and have no memory whatsoever of what's happened. When that, and I get the feeling that when you describe yourself as a conscious channel, that's not the experience that you're
that's having. Not my experience.
Yeah.
I don't always remember what comes through, because sometimes the energy is intense. Sometimes there's a lot of information. I don't always retain it. But the way it works for me is I'm a clairsentient. So I feel very, very deeply, very acutely. So I'll feel the energy. We'll ask a question. I'll feel the energy of the answer. And then my job is to find words to match up with the energy I feel. And that's the imperfect part, right? Like, I just want to be clear that this is not an infallible scientific practice.
Right.
This is an imperfect, situation where I'm receiving the energy and I've got to find words to put to it. And in most cases, I'm pretty accurate. But I'm human. I have my filters.
Right.
So my interpretation of the energy might not always be 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, when I had to learn, and this was really hard, I had to learn to put as little interpretation on it as possible. I had to put enough, I had to describe things enough to get the message across. But the more I tried to describe and interpret, and this could mean this and this could mean that, then I'm like, I'm just putting my own stuff on top of that, right? I'm just, this may or may not true. So I learned to trust and sort of surrender kind of early on and go, I'm just going to tell you what happened. I'm just going to give it to you, and it may or may not mean anything to you. And 99% of the time, people are like, whoa, I don't know how you knew that. I'm like, I don't know how I knew that either. And I probably didn't know that. Somebody else knew that and just gave me the information. I don't want to take credit for anything. I'm just a mouthpiece at this point. But,
right. I'm just the messenger.
Right. So if it's accurate, thank them. You can thank me for not trying to interpret it using my very limited human brain. And that's about it. But, I mean, I hadn't done any channeling before, and shamanic practice is, you're doing similar things in that you're merging with helping spirits a lot and you're staying merged with them. But I had a teacher one day, she's just like, you're going to work on channeling. You are going to channel. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And, it turned out to be just a really, really incredible experience. And I guess maybe I hold it back and don't do it so much don't do it so much publicly. And maybe I should, but it's a little bit sacred, for lack of a better term. Like I kind of like hold on to it on my own. And I will do it with people that, I'm close to and that have a level of understanding and that sort of thing. So I don't know, maybe I'm holding myself back a little bit. Who knows?
Well, what does your soul say about it, John?
That's a good question. I should check in. Yeah, I mean, my soul wants to be out. My soul wants to be everywhere and out and about. So that's why I'm all over the place. That's a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, I should do some more of that. But I do think that there are a lot of people maybe who channel wisdom. Maybe not directly, maybe they're not trans-channeling or that sort of thing, but there are a lot of people who get messages from spirit. Stuff comes through and like, I don't know where I got this from, or I don't know where I got this from. And I know lots of people who are sort of unconscious, clairsentient people. Just like, I don't know why, but I feel like I have to go do this right now. And my mom is one of those people where years and years ago when I was in college, my aunt passed away all of a sudden in the middle of the night, brain aneurysm. So it was like she wasn't sick. There was nothing expected. It was really weird. And she was declared brain dead at like 4:25 in the morning. And at that exact moment, my mom shot straight up in bed, looked at the clock, looked at my stepfather and said, "Something's happened. I'm going downstairs to sit by the phone." And went down and sat by the phone until a couple hours later, somebody called her to tell her what had happened. But yeah, so I could never get away with anything as a kid. My mom always knew. I was up to no good.
Right. Well, moms know anyway, but then if they're clairsentient on top of it all,
that's rough.
And I want to say that we are all channels.
Yes.
We all bring through information, wisdom, fluff, crap, whatever. We all bring stuff through. And it's important that we make a choice about what we're going to bring through.
Yeah.
That's really important. And when I really learned that lesson hardcore, when I started channeling, several months into it, I started having all these beings wanting to use my voice to speak. And I was like, no, you're not the right frequency. Or, I really had to set a boundary with the light realm and say, this is the energy I'm bringing through, nothing else. So we are all channels, whether we, bring through spirit or something else. We're all channels, and we need to make a choice and set boundaries about what we will bring through these vessels.
That is a really good point. And one of the things I talk about with people who are studying with me, for example, is that once you start to do this work, you light up, right? Like you're lit up. And, we exist, as you said, on all of these different realms and planes simultaneously, but we may not be really lit up. And there are lots of beings who are just sort of like, oh, that's just another person, whatever. And then you're like a neon light all of a sudden in the middle of the desert, and lots of beings are going to be attracted because they're like, oh, here's somebody I can communicate with or communicate through. And it's not necessarily that they are quote unquote evil beings, but they're just, it's like picking up hitchhikers. You don't necessarily want to just open yourself up to every being out there. You do want to have those boundaries. So I think that's a really good point to make with people. I've worked with and met a lot of people who sort of blew their doors wide open, usually through the use of entheogens or hallucinogenic drugs, take everything under the sun, and then they come in and I can see beings just flying like bugs flying around their head, and their eyes don't focus. And I've seen people who are seeing things like in the physical world, but not looking at them, just like reaching over and grab it, because they're not looking through their own eyes at that point. They've picked up hitchhikers, and you start to lose that boundary between what's you and, because, all of a sudden I have I have this second sight ability. Well, that's cool if it's yours. It's cool if it's your second sight.
Right. I'm going to transition because this is why the Soul Power Symposium is so important.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah.
We're really teaching people how to get in touch with their essence, their soul, I have a practice that I do with activating the soul essence. And that's going to be something that's part of the Soul Power Symposium for the entire 13 days. People will have access to that video to work with the material of activating their soul essence and cultivating the soul essence so that we're filling ourselves with us, not other things, not other beings.
Right.
That's really important.
Fill up. That's great. And for those, we've touched on it a little bit, but the Soul Power Symposium is this 13-day event that's happening at the starts June 20th. Oh, the solstice, June 21st. Yeah, gosh, I don't know why I didn't put that together in my head. June 21st. There are 12 co-collaborators?
11 presenters plus myself.
Okay. So 11 presenters. I happen to be one of them. So if you enjoy my podcast, I will definitely include links to all of Susie's stuff, but there will also be links to that. And where that is particularly time sensitive. I mean, I apologize if you're listening to this 2 years from when we're putting it out there. But if you're hearing this in the beginning of June, and I say this because of myself, this is what I do. I'm like, I see something like, oh, that's really cool. I want to do that. I'm going to register for that tomorrow. Like, don't do that because you're going to go, where was that link again? Whatever. Just click on the link and go register for that. You will not regret it. I am going to tune in to all of these different teachers, and I think our chat was really cool as well. Sure. We had a really cool chat about soul stuff, about this all of this stuff. So I think it's a really fantastic opportunity to really become empowered, and this is the kind of stuff that I love, that I absolutely love about spiritual work. This really, like, let's discover who you are at a core level. Let's discover how incredibly powerful you are. You're going to surprise yourself.
And I really want to highlight June 21st because that's when the Prime Creator channeling will be available for free for 24 hours. June 21st. That's the solstice, June 21st.
Don't forget.
And that is the foundation for the entire symposium. So if you miss the channeling, you kind of miss the foundation for the whole thing. So please, what John said, register now so that you get the emails to remind you when to receive the content. June 21st is a big day.
Yeah. Yep. And I follow the wheel of the year, and so those are the solstices and equinoxes and halfway points between those. Super important days. They're days of big transitions where things like big shifts can happen just because of the energy of the planet and the sun and what we're going through. And it's a really, really good time. And summer solstice in particular for me is a great time to begin anything. I don't know if other people find that, but it's a really good place to start. Where winter solstice for me is I'm almost going into hibernation by that point. I'm celebrating all the hard work that I've done, but I'm almost ready to go into hibernation. But June 21st, I am ready to hit the ground running and work on whatever it is I'm working on. So definitely get registered for that. Well, we've been talking for just about an hour. It doesn't seem like that. I could, I'm sure, talk to you for a lot longer, and I would love to have you on again sometime. But I want to thank you for coming on, and I also want to give you a chance if there's any sort of last messages or anything you want to talk about before we go.
Yeah, I'll just invite everyone to put a hand over their belly, over their solar plexus, and just take a nice deep breath. And just feel yourself grounded in your body. And I just invite you to set an intention now for what you want in your life, for your soul mission, for your life purpose. If there's something that you need in order to move forward in your life purpose, if there's something that you desire that would make executing your life mission easier for you. Just ask for that now as you breathe. It is done. It is done. It is done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. It's been so delightful having you on, and I'm so looking forward to June 21st coming up. I'm super, super excited about it. So thank you again. We'll definitely have you on again. So you'll hear some music again, and somebody else's voice, and then we'll end. If I hit the right button.
You have been listening to Speaking Spirit with your host, John Moore. For more info or to contact John, go to mainshaman.com. That's maineshaman.com.